When we log in, we are presented with our landing page. This saves buffering and faster to get to where you want to go. We have our assets, drivers, our timeline, info hub streams, and then depending on your access whether you have uploads, config groups. We also have our historical tracking with the live tracking page. We have our clustering of our vehicles. Now with this we can turn these on and off depending on how you want to view it. We'll start at the top. We have our map type. We can have street view, hybrid, terrain, satellite, or traffic, which includes the current traffic trends at the current point in time. As you can see at the moment, we have good traffic everywhere due to the COVID and lack of movements of vehicles at the moment. On the right hand side here we have our search bar or find. We'll find the nearest asset, worker, or find a place on the map. We have our geofencing tool for adding geofences. We have our view many assets in a new window, so if you want to pull a number of assets out and monitor them in a separate window while you do other things, we have that feature available there. We then have our map layers options. This is all per user, so how you set this up is how you view it. It doesn't affect anyone else's window. So we can have asset labels, and then for those labels we then choose what we want to have. Do we need a fleet number? Do we want the driver name? And then if we want clustering turned on and off. Some clients prefer it on, some clients prefer it off. We can also show events on trail. We can include location labels and then tasks on trail if you're using tasks. We also have worker details if you're running worker application. And then for asset trail on map, for live tracking, we can show the entire last trip, or if you prefer, we can show the last up to 48 hours. Save, and then those are applied. Then we have our map tools. Obviously we have our query a point, we have our select and zoom, and we have our measure distance. And then we have our Google Earth option, and then full screen option. So back to our clustering. So for example, we have 11 vehicles here, 2 in Frio. If we go and click on a cluster, it will zoom in to that cluster. You can zoom in and out on that. And if we hover over a cluster, it will show you the area those vehicles are within, like a geofence. For example, so we can see them. It will show, oh, there we go, an area. Those 6 vehicles are within that area. With our query tool, we can query any point on the map and it will give the details. The same for assets. If we look at the asset vehicle details, it will tell us the asset description, the location, last position, speed, the driver, and any headings if it's moving. On the left hand side here we have all our assets. Down the side here we have our selection criteria. If you want to limit what you're looking at so you don't have all the vehicles, we can untick all the vehicles and then type in a filter. Only those vehicles will show, and then we can show the ones that we want to include on the screen. Then only those assets will be shown. Click the show selected, removes all the others from the list here. Also, we can choose what we want to see on the left hand tab here. By clicking the drop down, we can add or remove any of these here. We can also drag and drop depending how you want to view, etc. And then show all again. On the right hand side we have a drop down. We can view the details. We can go to the asset. We can view in a new window. We can lock on that asset, so as it's driving around it will follow it. Difference between this and view: once we go to it, the asset is able to drive off the page if it's in moving. We can show a trail on map, or we can go to the diagnostic tab to look at the current details of that asset. So let's go back to all of these, remove our filter from the top. We go to Holden, Colorado here, show trail on map. It shows its last trip, just from the service station back to the laydown yard. With any of these, we can obviously hover over any of these positions and it will give the details of that position, the location, obviously the speed it was doing, the area, the driver name, driver ID, asset ID, and its GPS coordinates. With COVID, a good thing to monitor, we'll just hide that trail. Is ensuring our assets are where they're supposed to be. So for example, if we have geofenced areas, for example up here where we don't want assets to go, we can monitor them live to ensure that those guys aren't going there. Or if we want to monitor how our journey is going, we can lock on an asset and follow that asset in a separate window while we do other work. So for showing those geofences, we come up the top here. From our locations menu, we can scroll through the list to find geofence, or if we know the name, we can start typing and they will appear on the list. And the same goes for showing a trail on map. If we want to show events, we need to have them selected to show on that trail. Select our events, and then when we do a show trail on map, we will have those events show up. Obviously there's been none of them show up on this trip. So one of the other features during this COVID thing is trying to find drivers. So if we need to find a nearest asset to an address at a location, latitude, or a position on the map. So for example, we'll just choose this position here and number of assets, 6 nearest assets. It's brought up these vehicles here, first 3, messaging device, yes, no, yes, distance, and the device description, or asset description, sorry, its last position, and the last time its ignition was cycled if available from that asset. We can then contact the driver of that asset and get them to assist in whatever is required. The reason we've got 6 here and we're only showing 3 is because we've got a number of tabs units with this vehicle. Or we could do a radius, 10 kilometers, search, and we've come up with there's a few extra vehicles there. So now we will go to historical tracking. So these are under monitor and under your tracking tabs, depending on your access, of course. And again, we have all the same options, but now under historical tracking, same with the map view. So the first thing we need to do is choose our time frame. So we can choose set dates or a drop down option. So for example, if we go last week, tick to apply, assets with trip last week, and then if we want assets with events as well. So for example, with our events that we've got selected up here, we have 43 that are showing over here as an example. We can then drop down and review those trips. This includes selecting ones with events. So it's exited demo, road speed over speeding as an example. Then we can show that on the map. Here is an example of exit demo, so it's exited a geofence zone, and that is the alert for it. Then we have our road speed over speeding, and on here we can see that the speed limit at the zone is 10 kilometers an hour, where the vehicle is traveling at 24.6 kilometers in that zone. We can have multiple vehicles being shown at the same time. So for example, we can hide all our trail up here. So for example, we can show on map, shows this trip and then the next trip. And then again, we have multiple actions here. We can also look at another vehicle at the same time, depending on the colour, and show on map. So now we have 2 assets showing on the screen. Obviously we can see the interactions between the 2 vehicles, and if I come down here to where one's actually done a bit more movement, no, they've all been movements around the property. The joys of COVID, we're not getting a lot of movement. Maybe the Outlander, we can show that one. There we go. So now you can see how your vehicles, this is obviously small scale, but on a larger scale, how your vehicles are interacting. So if we need to investigate an incident that's occurred, so for example, we'll have a look at this trip here. Exited demo, 3-axis liftoff, so the harsh cornering left's the one we want to investigate. Show on map, it shows the entire trip, and it happened at 5:42. So it's duplicate there under that. so we can see where it occurred. We can also, from there, we can go to the timeline and we can look on the timeline at the details of this incident. And this is the trip that the vehicles occurred for that day. You can zoom in by scrolling in on the time bar, and then all the events that we've had selected from our tracking page are now the same events that are selected here. We can add and remove events as we want to show them on the timeline, and if we hover over each one of them, all the details of those will come up. So a harsh cornering left occurred here, 0.37 of a G. And then we have all the details there, the trip. Up here we can go to tachograph, we can print this off as a report. We also have our query line which we can move along to look at each of the items as that crosses over. If we go to the tachograph, we can look at the second by second data that's occurred for this vehicle. So this has come up now. So this is the green line is for our RPM and blue is for our speed. We can add or remove other lines depending on what else is connected to the vehicle to record tachographical data, be it temperature, fuel, etc. Panic buttons, four-wheel drive, seatbelt. Same again, we can zoom in and out. For our harsh cornering left, we can look to see exactly whether the vehicle slowed down. It only slowed down to 28 kilometers an hour to take that corner. And over here we can see an over rev of 4,200 RPM, and then our max speed limit's obviously set at 120. This data here we can actually zoom right into second by scrolling in, and any point along that line we can grab and move, and any point we can also put a marker for reference, and then we can also print that out as a report. We also have our query line which we can then drag and drop and gives us the details as we go through, and then as an event occurs all that data shows up at the bottom as well on the timeline. We can scroll up and down depending on what other items we have. With this, if we want to select this one and these ones, and then we can remove them from our list to only show the ones we want to show. So we'll remove those two as well, and then when we do the report it only shows that data that we want it to show. So when we're doing our investigations we can look granularly at the incident and how it occurred, as well as how the vehicle was being driven up to that point in time. From here we'll now load the mobile app and we'll show you the mobile app version. So when logging into your mobile app we choose our organisation, we can filter, select the organisation, we can then select our sites, or select our assets, so for example we'll just do Holden, Colorado, and then we can also select our drivers and our events if we want to. Selections are done, we click a tick, and then our assets are available there. Down the bottom we have our asset list, we have our map view, which will then zoom in on all the assets we have highlighted in our list. We can tick on the vehicle and it will give the details of that asset, and then we can do notifications, distance to me or travel to that asset, center on, show trail, or send the details to someone. So with that there, sorry, click on that and we can show the trail. And unfortunately I think it's actually just moved on the site, so we can't actually see a long journey, but it will show the details there. If we go back to the asset menu, and we click on that vehicle, it'll give us the asset and its trip details. We can go down through those trips, and then if we need to have a look at one, for example this one here, we can view the trip and it will show that trip on the map. Again, we can tick on the icons and it will give us the full detail of that trip. And if we've set up push notifications, we can come in here and see our notifications for our events that are triggered for this database. Instead of having to go to our email, they'll come to our phone as push notifications. And the three icons at the bottom gives you your selection criteria, manage your settings, your event notifications, settings, and logout. We can also monitor our drivers instead of our assets. So click on the top there, select our drivers. Sorry, it helps if I actually push the tick instead of back. We have all our drivers and their current state. We click on one, gives the driver details and their last trip. Again, we can click on view trip. This one won't go anywhere because it wasn't a demo case. Okay, no, it has shown a trip. From Subiaco to Fremantle. Again, we can go to our map and we can see our drivers and where they are. So for COVID, it's very good for in your pocket managing. You don't have to be at your PC. Just keep an eye on your drivers and their alerts.